Good morning, Facebook family. Today I want to talk to you about a mom, the wife of Zebedee and the mom of James and John. But in the Passion Translation, they call James Jacob. So I'm reading Matthew chapter 20, starting with verse 20. It says, the wife of Zebedee approached Jesus with her sons, Jacob and John, which we know as James and John. She knelt before him and asked him for a favor. He said to her, "What is it that you want?" And she answered, "Make the decree that these my sons will rule with you in your kingdom, one sitting on your right hand and one on your left." So I am not here to criticize this mom, because as a mom, I know that we want the best for our sons. And just to point this out, in the chapter before, Jesus had actually said to his disciples, "Listen to this truth. In the age of the restoration of all things, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will have 12 thrones of your own, and you will govern the 12 tribes of Israel." So James and John had probably run home to tell their parents, guess what? We're going to have 12 thrones and we're going to rule the 12 tribes of Israel. So James and John's mom, the wife of Zebedee, got super excited about that and decided she was going to make sure that her sons had the best spots with the 12 thrones. Well, previously in Matthew chapter 17, Jesus had taken Peter, James, and John up to the mountain for the transfiguration. So, their mom also heard about that experience. So she wants to make sure that Peter's knocked out and James and John get the best spots, because that was really Jesus's inner circle, Peter, James, and John. But first of all, I'm just laughing because I recently saw this great movie called Loving Leah, and it's a Jewish girl whose husband dies, and the brother-in-law has to have a levirate marriage. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but it was a great movie. I learned a lot about Jewish culture and also about Jewish moms. There were a couple of really feisty Jewish moms in there, so I can actually imagine in my mind the wife of Zebedee coming up to Jesus and saying this. But I'm not going to fault her, because she says, "Make the decree." And that just shows how much faith she had. She realized Jesus was king of the universe. She knew that if he made the decree, it would happen. Nothing else would happen but what he says. So that showed her faith. But then this is Jesus's answer to her. "You don't know what you're asking." Then looking in the eyes of Jacob and John, Jesus said to them, "Are you prepared to drink from the cup of suffering that I'm about to drink? And are you able to endure the baptism into death that I'm about to endure?" And they answered him, "Yes, we are able." That was really bold of them to say yes. They didn't know what they were getting into. And I just encourage us and myself to just say yes, whatever God wants of us. Just say yes, whether we realize what we're getting into or not. Then we've given our word, our promise, and we must keep our word. But they were really bold. They said, "Yes, we're able to do it." And then Jesus said, "Yes, you're right. You will indeed drink the cup of my suffering and be immersed into my death. But to who the ones who sit at the place of highest honor is not mine to decide. My Father is the one who chooses them and prepares them." So just thinking about this, drinking the cup of suffering that Jesus was offering them, and they said yes, it reminds me, many, many years ago, my pastor's wife, who was actually a friend of mine, invited me to go to a women's conference with her. And I was just asking her questions. Where is it? What is this women's conference? And she said, "Well, I'll just send you the brochure. You can look it over." So I'm looking over the brochure, and all the women that were speakers had been through the most tremendous, horrific, traumatic things in their life. But of course, they were overcomers. That's why they were speakers. So in my mind, I'm thinking, no, I don't want to go to this conference. And if that's what it takes to be a speaker, I never want to be a speaker. I really like my life, but as we all know, that it rains on the just and unjust alike. And when I was in harvest school, Will Hart laid his hands on me and said, "Break her, Lord." And I'm like, that does not sound good at all. And it wasn't. It was just a season of breaking and suffering. And if we endure to the end, if we hold on to our hope in the end, that we will be saved and have deliverance. And I'd just like to read one last verse that I read this morning out of Matthew chapter 24. First of all, Jesus is telling us everything that's going to happen at the end of the age to usher in the new age when he comes back, and what he had just been talking about, the restoration of all things. And so he was just talking about all the sorrows that's going to happen, the wars that are going to happen. But he says, Matthew chapter 24, verse 14, yet through it all, the good news of heaven's kingdom will be proclaimed all over the world, providing every nation with a demonstration of the reality of God. I love that so much. This morning I spent some time listening to the oldie but goodie Andre Crouch song, Through It All. Through it all, I've learned to trust in Jesus. Through it all, I've learned to trust in God. I've learned to depend upon his word. And Jesus is saying, no matter what happens in the world, no matter what happens in your own life, through it all, the good news of the gospel will be preached to all nations with, I love this part, demonstration of the reality of God, in the demonstration of power, which means the dead will be raised, the blind will see, the deaf will hear, and everyone will be healed. I thank you for listening, and I hope you take this to heart today, and I will hopefully talk to you later.